Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of CX Conversations. I'm Matt Simpson, Managing Director of CandySpace, and today we are talking how you use technology to deliver amazing, brilliant, connected, consistent experiences in the streaming sector. And I'm very happy to say I have the Chief Technology Officer of Hearst Networks, Matt Westrup, with me. Hello Matt.
Hi Matt, how are you?
Very good, thank you. I'm excited to talk to you. Perhaps we could just kick off by talking a little bit about Hearst Networks and what your role is there.
Yeah, sure. So I look after the technology and teams that underpin the Hearst Networks portfolio of media entertainment products and services. That's across Europe, Middle East and Africa. And we have a blend of traditional linear channels, and then we have quite an array of different digital products and services, be that SVOD, AVOD, FAST, BVOD, and mid-form, original mid-form as well. So it is, we're on that journey from having been a traditional broadcaster and through to kind of a very different environment at the moment, which is definitely an accelerating journey. And one of the things that definitely helps us at our core is we concentrate on the two core brands that we have in history and crime and investigation, and the quality of the content.
So you mentioned a couple of the brands. Are there any other familiar names that our viewers might know from Hearst Networks portfolio?
So in the UK, we have our free-to-air is a brand called Blaze, but yeah, History is probably the flagship. Mm-hmm. But the true crime space is a very energetic content space.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is across, it's really developed.
I'm going to say like 80% of all podcasts are yes. True crime. I just made that stat up, but it feels like a lot.
No, absolutely. I mean, it is in publishing, it is, in literature and drama as well. Sort of scripted is very much sort of adolescence being a prime example recently of something that took that genre on, was absolutely brilliant with it. So, we liked in the factual entertainment space, we're sort of, best in class, and, we like to, we inhabited that space for a long. This is not the first time we've been doing true crime. Like, we've been at it for a while.
For sure. Okay, so you have a diverse portfolio from sort of AVOD, SVOD, as you say, fast channels, traditional broadcast channels. How do you leverage technology to create connected and consistent experiences across all these various platforms and content formats?
Carefully and with effort, I think, because we are, unlike perhaps other broadcasters on that journey. Let's just talk about scale. I mean, there's less than 300 people in our business, so that's the sort of scale that we're talking about. And yet we've got a very, as you say, very complex and full sort of products and services portfolio. And we come from a pay TV heritage. And so one of the consistent things is that partnership is extremely important to us. Not only with our kind of pay TV partners, but also with our vendors and service providers and so on, and of course with our audience ultimately. And so leveraging technology means leveraging a lot of other people's technology in many regards and respects, but also in terms of the one thing we didn't pivot our business to a single streaming app. Firstly because we didn't really have the consumer brand. And was it the best use of investment for the business? And so we continued with our instinct to partner, and of course as our partners involved and new players came in and we partnered them, we really found a place to be able to operate in, and at the same time developing our own direct to consumer technology and apps. Now we are sort of buy not build from a technology principle point of view. And that's the only way we can kind of get the scale and quality of the technology that we need, because many other people are investing and using in it. So it's about the choices of people that we work with, and then getting to know our platform partners as best we can to be able to help their technology help us.
That makes sense, and actually maybe we could dig into that a bit. So working with partners is critical to your ecosystem. What are the key considerations from a technology perspective or an integration perspective that you think about when selecting and collaborating with partners and providers?
So there are different things to think about depending on the partner. One of the consistent things is much of our relationship from a technology point of view is a content and data pipeline, and so we have to be very we have to concentrate focus a lot on making sure that pipeline is very, very reliable, because we're probably getting through making something like 55,000 episodic deliveries a year, to the likes of Amazon and Apple and Sky and a whole plethora of other platforms across Europe. And so the reliability and reputational kind of aspects of being a good deliverer and of quality content is really important. Then there is the spectrum of metadata, and metadata is something that has different challenges depending on where in the value chain that you're dipping into. But obviously, at the end of the day, to present our content to our audience in the best possible way, metadata is absolutely critical. And so we have to understand, firstly, those integrations to make sure that what we mean by something on this side, emerges and manifests on the other side. And then understanding how best to curate that in other people's platforms, as well as our own direct-to-consumer apps as well. So I think both of those are really important. The third integration part is the kind of feedback loop of the performance data. And again, that is a challenge in terms of different platforms. It's a mixed bag as to how much data you get back. And secondly, nothing really maps. Everyone's got slightly different standards and ways of doing things. And so it's hard sometimes to get exactly what you said, the consistency across that user experience. And so the team are very dedicated, very passionate to make it work as best as possible in each of those individual platforms, because it's not a central app that we deliver everywhere that we've got complete control over. So we have to be very listening, very reactive, and then of course understanding the limits of our own, what we're in control of in terms of curation on those platforms, because there's configuration opportunities in all of them. They're all slightly different and some are deeper than others. But again, it's just making sure that we present our content that works with how that platform works to the best that we possibly can.
Yeah, I can see where that gives you a lot of advantages, as you say, in terms of the platforms themselves investing in their own technology, but also, I guess, challenges in terms of ownership of that overall experience.
I mean, completely. I mean, am I going to try to compete with Amazon for their streaming technology or Sky for their, kind of audience appeal? Absolutely not. So you're absolutely right. And actually working with, those are two good examples. You work slightly different with one versus the other, so.
So can we talk a bit about your technology efforts around the supply chain? So where you've got a content supply chain, as you say, are you able to drive efficiencies that benefit your end viewer experience as well as your platform partners?
Well, completely. I mean, one of the things the audience benefits from is, consistent quality content that is delivered to partners in a way that, our speed to market can be short, that we can deliver at scale. So those aren't impacting the user experience in the traditional sense, but it means that if we invested heavily over the last few years to ensure that our supply chain, the bits we are in control of in terms of our content and our metadata and our images, can be managed. It was a big cloud migration, and indeed, new technology for our post-production as well, so where we're creating content. And so that's the best support I can give the business in terms of being able to have an agile platform that can deliver at scale and cuts down the speed to market.
Okay. You touched on the importance of data across the different platforms. Again, where you're working with partners, are you able to gather and utilize the data, the analytics, the insights that you need into content performance, audience preferences to inform your own content strategy and collaboration?
Brilliant. And one that works on those platforms and with linear, because essentially it's the same content universe. We're not curating in radically different between one versus the other. So and that's a great question, because the research team at work, they are always hungry for data and would love an awful lot more, and the merchandising teams, same thing. And so there's a lot of, I guess, acceptance that we need, that the things that are within our control in terms of being able to utilize that data. But absolutely, so we'll know straight away. We'll get to know those algorithms. We'll get to know the trending data, and we get diverse results. We will not quite understand sometimes where something in the back catalogue has suddenly just popped somewhere, and yet on another platform it is the the big commission that we've been pushing that is, we expect it to do well and is doing well. So it is diverse and we're learning all the time. And so, there are no expectations around the outcomes of any of that other than to learn and react as quickly as we can and become really experts in those different platforms. And that's a skill set I guess a few years ago, that's not a skill set we expected to develop within the business, but it's definitely one that we have developed. And that has its links with the skill set and performance marketing as well from platform to platform.
On a similar note, we know that, I guess, competitors who have a single product, Netflix, Disney Plus, have invested hugely in personalization and sort of highly sophisticated AI-driven tactics to be able to deliver very, very personalized, tailored content recommendations to its audiences. With your more diverse portfolio and with your partner-driven ecosystem, are you able to deliver that?
Not in a managed way and not in a consistent way that we know that it's working, operating in the same way for every partner. Obviously, with our own direct-to-consumer app, we work with our great vendors that are in that value chain. And yes, we can drive those kind of innovations that are appropriate for that particular product. But again, I guess, are we cheating by saying that Amazon are really good at it? So we'll let them get on with it. So, I mean, that ecosystem is fantastic. We just, we set ourselves a task of being an expert in it and at the same time partnering Amazon in the best way that we can.
Just as a side question, your own direct-to-consumer offering, where I imagine you have complete control over that. How are you able to deliver personalized recommendations?
Yeah, and it's not complete control, I guess, because again, it's the sort of democracy of working with vendors who have roadmaps that have to meet the needs of all their customers. So again, we've bought, not built, and so we don't have that complete control, I guess, in that way. But certainly, we're able to influence it much better, and that's when we can work with very specialist vendors in that area and see what innovation they are bringing to it. And focus that, as you say, on the consumer experience. And yes, AI, and I suspect this won't be the first time I mention AI in this talk, but that is becoming quite a profoundly useful tool in customization. And I guess the balance is around trying to do that in an authentic way that's best for the audience, that's overtly best for the audience, because I think audiences are going to be sensitive to feeling that their personalities and their data are being mined a little bit too much. But at the end of the day, it is to deliver something that audiences connect with really easily. And even with the technology that's improving, there are still lots of challenges, because even Netflix, who are supreme at this, we still know that the average American spends 110 hours a year choosing what to watch on video on demand services. And so, it's not a perfect science, and humans are sort of, I suppose, reassuringly difficult to influence in some ways. But it is extraordinary how fast that area is growing. And we know, I think Evan Shapiro said it on his podcast this week, actually referenced some research where over half of people will choose to use a streaming service based on the user experience rather than the content. So we know it's important.
Absolutely. And also in terms of the, expectation from consumers, actually they don't always want to choose, which is why we've seen fast channels, of which you have some as well, rise in popularity. Around. Yeah, exactly. Actually that sort of sit back experience and just show me every single episode of Nashville.
And that's where there are different content strategies depending on the platform, because that deep archive and nostalgia is a sort of definitely attractive as well, depending on your audience. And so it is lean back, I guess, which is I find that a rather irritating phrase actually. But it's the kind of content that appeals at that moment for because all of us have different sides of us, that different content, we choose different things to watch with our mood at any one point in time, or whether we want to challenge ourselves or whether we just want something to relax in front of. And so to have an ecosystem that can deliver both those kinds of things is obviously a challenge. With essentially within genres that we've got, like we're not the full bore entertainment experience with one of everything, like Disney's, got, or Max or something. And so, we have to be very mindful about how we, select our audiences. But in a way, working within genres in that way is great, because you can be so focused and passionate about what it is your audience appeal is.
Can I talk a bit about the role of a CMS, or a number of CMSs perhaps within your ecosystem?
I don't know what the sort of collective noun is, but yeah.
That's a good point, yeah. CMSs. I imagine at Hearst, with increasing demand for diverse content formats, the amount of different places in which you need to distribute that content, how many CMSs have you got? Are they scalable and agile enough to be able to support your needs?
So from a back end sort of asset management point of view, that our supply chain that we've been sort of patiently building over the last couple of years or so is really the sort of rock solid trunk of all of that. That's where everything emanates from, and that has been a very well defined product and a very well defined purpose that it has within the ecosystem. Then when we hand off to other platforms, or indeed to our own direct-to-consumer technology, then you're using the next CMS in the chain, or the first CMS in their chain. And so it's about the consistency of being sure that, and especially the metadata, flows all the way through to the audience, and that it is driving the kind of architecture, design and user experience on the front end of all these applications and services that you want. And in some cases, that you can clearly see that works very well, and in other cases there's work to do. So again, the team have to be quite universal in their view, so that idea of being sort of obsessed with the data feedback and product dev in a very neat cycle isn't our experience. We have to be a bit more pragmatic, and sometimes the answer is technology or roadmap development, and sometimes it's a conversation with a partner.
You mentioned AI before, which we're duty bound to do in any conversation in 2025. Are there any particular emerging tools, technologies, platforms that you think can enhance your operations or your relationship with partners or your ecosystem as a whole?
Yeah, I think I discussed the challenge of metadata, and this is more hope rather than prediction, but I would love to see more consistency in the way the industry, and it's one of those very complicated, overwhelming things that people recognise as a problem for the industry, and has been over many years. And there have been plenty of good people that have tried really hard to put their shoulders to the boulder and improve things, but it is a messy world, and it's one of those things that AI probably doesn't care about the emotional load of that and will just find a way through. So at the moment, I guess I'm not seeing anything that's popping out with that, but that would be one emerging area for AI that I think would be an obvious one in terms of metadata consistency, and indeed in terms of the rigor and consistency of digital performance data coming back from platforms. Whereas, good old broadcast has that kind of nailed, everyone knows where they are with that. Whereas in the digital world, from platform to platform, it's quite variable, and so for someone like us, it's quite difficult to get that consistency. So those are two areas I think would be, from a streaming and audience perspective, would be really useful. When we talk about images, I guess, things like, we know the importance of key art in being able to talk to our audience and best present, the offering that we have. And it's, it's extraordinary with all this technology that actually it is a still image that speaks so well to audiences. It's what we engage with, is what do we think of this program before we watch it, and a still image is a very compelling way of explaining that. But therefore, underneath that key art, there's a huge volume of episodic images that you need, and again, that's a treadmill, and so AI is already helping us with that. Obviously, access services, localization, again, and then Netflix already doing this, but you're where you're seeing key art very personalized. I think you're already seeing probably generative AI promos and so on popping up on streaming services that will be personalized to your. So I think again, it's about that engagement piece where AI will be, very useful.
I only found out very recently that the episode stills that I see on Netflix are not the same
Yeah.
ones you see.
I know, right? And that's all down to, which Matt am I speaking to? What day is it? What's he just watched, and what's he most likely to click on? We'll choose this image exactly. Yeah, and so I think we probably are already seeing and not noticing, but the kind of trails and promos are probably beginning to be similarly generated.
I'm sure. In what I think we're agreeing is a relatively complex ecosystem at Hearst, how are you able as C2O to foster a culture of innovation, of trying new things, of embracing new technologies when everything's moving so fast?
Overwhelmed, yeah. Well, first thing is I don't do it on my own. So, we really like to have each other's back at Hearst. And so even as a leadership team, innovation and the mindset and how that manifests in the business is, a real concern of ours. And so we try and make sure those conversations are happening regularly. And it's permission to learn, I think, is the biggest thing. We try not to talk about failure. I know it is quite fashionable, has been, especially in technology, to talk about fail fast and all the rest of it, move fast and break things. But we talk about the cost of learning and maybe learning, not failing. And we're sort of a bit enamored with a Nelson Mandela quote, which he said, I never fail, I either win or I learn. And so, that really resonated with us. And so that's, between us, that's what we try and have honest and open conversations with everyone about. Change is the hardest thing. And I mean, I can talk about the roadmap all day, but 90% of my time is really about change and people, not technology. And I think you have to get that right, and you have to have trust and a culture that supports innovation, not just words that support an innovation. And it's harder to do, actually.
I can imagine. Is there any innovation you're particularly proud of?
Well, I think in general, especially in the digital space, we're quite fast. We're quite early adopters, historically, and we don't give ourselves enough credit for that. But when it comes to fast, or it's come to VOD or SVOD, we have been early adopters. I mean, we launched with Amazon in 2017, 2018, which was then a kind of what felt like a mad experiment, and is now such a big part of our business. It's a brilliant story for us. And so, I think I'm just proud with the fact that we've managed to be quite early adopters in so many cases.
You've touched on some of this already, but what are some of the things that keep you up at night in terms of the biggest technological challenges that you have in delivering quality content across all of your diverse ecosystem?
So first, I'd say it doesn't keep me up at night. I think
that's nice.
The responsibility of a leader is that you should be rested. I firmly believe that. Otherwise, you're going to be prone to making bad decisions, I think. But I take your point. What's my anxiety around this? And I think our scale is obviously a limiting factor because our stomachs are always sort of not as big as our eyes in terms of the amount of change that we think we can get through. And actually, there's definitely a limit, just on the human limit, of how much change you can get through. So one of the challenges is to be selective, and that's sometimes frustrating because we have a lot of good ideas, but it's having to say no. And some like Apple are brilliant at that, and just putting stuff on the shelf and going, that's not for now. I think the other big challenge is the kind of trade-off between in the kind of earnings call of the recent ones of Netflix and Apple. They're sort of trading barbs around, whether having a legacy operation was, holding you back, or actually, a brilliant kind of revenue stream. But I would say that when you are supporting, traditional linear infrastructure, which is really, really important to the business, there's a lot of legacy technology associated with that, and that's quite a common challenge because you've got real fast-moving innovation on one side, and then you've got other things which are really well behaved because they've been perfected over many years, but the interface points and the kind of the point at which do you buy a new system, do you upgrade it, how does it speak to others? I mean, that is, the legacy is always something that is a bit of a frustration.
When you have meetings with your CFO, I assume you do, how are you justifying
Many times.
How are you justifying the return on investment of the technology investments that you've made?
Well, okay, firstly, I think before I get to that conversation is make sure that I think any CTO has got to have a brilliant relationship with the CFO, because it's not about, oh, I'll go away and do a long list of things that I need to go build, and I'll hand that over in a spreadsheet, and that's the conversation. The conversation is about, what are we investing in together? Do you understand the financing of this? Do you understand the benefits of it? Do you understand why we're doing it? And so one of the first markers is this what the business needs? Not is it a brilliant idea, or is it the great innovation, or are we enamored with the idea? Is it what the business needs? Will it make life easier for people here? Will it deliver to our partners and to our audiences? And then from a financial point of view, the easy one is, does it cost less than we're spending at the moment? And that is, especially that's when legacy actually is an opportunity, because innovation isn't always about the new thing. It's sometimes going to be about the new way of doing old things. And if you can, shift your spend in that way, then that's, it's a really kind of good way of being able to invest in innovation and new markets and new audiences without having to go to the board and ask for funding. So I think that's the second thing. And then the third kind of criteria, I guess, is, does the audience benefit from this? Does our content benefit from it? Does the audience benefit? So I'd say those are the sort of three things I tend to think about. And a word on the, there's a lot written, I think, and rightly so, about the analytics and KPIs of return on investment. But again, knowing what your bandwidth is and what slows you down. I mean, there are some times when it's not, I wouldn't call it instinct, because it's very deep dives on things. But there's a time to which, looking back and trying to figure out whether it was the right thing or not, it has to stop, and you have to move on, because you can't take two parallel paths and at the same time and see which one's better. So sometimes you just have to live with it.
I'm just going to throw one final question at you, Matt. With all the wisdom you've accumulated over the years, if you could go back and give some advice to younger Matt Westrup at the start of his career, what might that be?
That advice would be, just take everything that comes as it comes, and it's about acceptance. So just don't be afraid of acceptance, because it does. Whether it leads to wisdom or not, in my case, I don't know, but for sure, I think it's the best chance you've got to arriving at wisdom about the things. It's a longer game than you think it is.
I think that's great advice for anyone, not just young Matt Westrup. And thanks so much. We could have talked for ages, but so many good insights and thoughts there. I really appreciate the time. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.